Good morning, Davidson. Hello.
Hey, good morning, Liz. How are you?
I'm great. I'm great. How are you doing?
Good. Just had a nice morning walk, so I always feel good after getting some exercise and just being with nature. It's nice.
That's a really nice way to start the day. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm very pleased to be talking with you this morning, Davidson. And I Davidson is one of our collaborating authors for the Great Pause, Blessings and Wisdom from COVID-19. So thank you for taking this time this morning to talk. And I'd love to hear from you how just tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're living right now, and just a little bit to help us get to know you.
Yeah. Jan, Liz, I really appreciate you. I'll never forget like just your kindness and your heart. And like when I first met you, I was like, oh, like I'm sure people tell you all the time you have positive energy. So it's always nice being in your presence. So thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Um, so I work at LinkedIn as an account executive in the learning solutions. So basically, we just help train companies in business leadership, and it's a fun job. I get to speak with a lot of companies on like how to like help train their employees. Like, and more recently, there's like a lot of diversity, inclusion, and belonging. So that's fun. And then I also have a coaching practice on the side. I tend to help. Um, it seems like young professionals who want to have like I guess imposter syndrome is a common thing. Um, and people that are maybe too humble, like humility, where they're like almost like shooting themselves in the foot. This
Mm.
is something that I've dealt with with a lot of my life and growing up. So yeah, and I'm grateful to do this project with you. And I've met so many interesting people who are into wellness and into like spirituality and just like, healing and all this like really cool stuff that I've been into since I've done accomplishment coaching, which that's how we met.
Right. Exactly. Grateful for that. Yes. And I'm curious how, well, I know, but I'd like our listeners to hear how you were affected by COVID-19. Did it keep life the same for you? Was it a big change?
Yeah, I think it's fair to say like everyone's been like pretty affected, right? So I live in Manhattan, which it was it's interesting now because it seems like the tables have turned, but Manhattan obviously at one point was like the epicenter, right? The most. So I'm still living here. I did move to Jersey for a little bit with at my fiance's. So we got engaged like actually like right before all this happened. So luckily like that we were able to go on vacation, and then like it seemed like everything just so a lot has changed like since that engagement. Um, but yeah, it's been an interesting. Yeah, I think COVID has definitely helped me kind of just be able to like slow down and just spend and just pursue like creative efforts, like writing in my blog a lot more, doing a lot of podcast interviews, working on my YouTube channel, like stuff that I just didn't have time for. I was like too busy. I was just saying yes to everyone else's demands and not really focusing on what I want to do for myself.
Mhm. And it's interesting because I knew that you were a very busy person, but I didn't quite get what that actually means until I read your chapter. And I'm like, oh my goodness, how on earth is he doing all of these things and all the volunteer work that you do and just nonstop commitments, and connecting with people. And it sounds so intense. So this whole thing must have just felt so unnerving, right? Like, what are you saying? I can't do all this stuff, right?
Yeah.
Whew, turn on the hen. And it's funny because, and I mentioned this one because I know you do the podcast, and some people we know that are in the book are doing the podcast with you. And I say, so Davidson, I know he's so busy and he does so many things, but I never got that with you. Like the second I met you, I felt like, oh, he has such this calm presence. You know, I feel like he's really with me when we're talking. And it's, I don't know, it's just, it strikes me as interesting that you can have that in the midst of that. So cool. So anyway.
Aw, thank you, Liz. I think it definitely helps, when you surround yourself with like people like yourself and, people like Lisa and Ryan and Melissa and, Mark Hunter is my coach. And, I talk to Christine Sachs and Laura Westman all the time. I think it definitely doesn't hurt when you have all these amazing people who are leading by example like yourself.
Yeah. Lovely folk. Wonderful leaders. Yeah. So let's see. So you chose to write during this time, right? This is not everyone's choosing that. Do you have any advice for people that are writing? How did it shake out for you?
Yeah, this writing, I have an interesting relationship to writing. I think I shared with you and some others on our Zoom meetings. But being like a non-native, like so, my parents like don't speak English well. Like they didn't even graduate from high school in Vietnam, right? And then so when they immigrated as refugees to the States, we would just speak Vietnamese at home. So I was always very like self-conscious about my grammar and my writing. So I definitely think it's one of the things I've learned from this collaboration is like like be able to partner with amazing people like yourself, so that because I used to be like someone who would just try to do everything on my own. I think somehow I had it that like the self-made millionaire type of mindset, but then I realized actually like no one is actually ever self-made, right? There's so many people involved. um, but to answer your question, yeah, I would say the advice I would give to people is like, if you're okay with it and you're happy with your work, then that's all that matters. Because I think a lot of times we think like, oh, how will others perceive my writing? And I think if we're too self-conscious, like if we're too like thinking about what others would think, then I think you'll never truly be happy with your writing, because ultimately you're never going to make everyone happy. And I also think that I think the more vulnerable you are, it's like scary, but I think the more people can relate, because I think we all like struggle and we all have the same human emotions, but we think we're the only ones that think these these crazy thoughts. So I think the more we are just able to just share ourselves like free with freedom without any expectations, because I've been, because I write a lot for LinkedIn, because I have like I think like now 14,000 LinkedIn connections.
Oh my goodness.
And I used to write in with like the thought process of like, okay, like is this gonna get me a lot of likes? And it's like kind of weird, because like I think a lot of good writers like yourself, we kind of know which are things will get a lot of likes and which, but then like if you're writing for the sake of just getting likes, then I think like people can like sense that, and then people will be turned off by it. So for me, when I just come from the heart and I come from a place of just like, hey, like I'm just sharing myself without expectations. Actually, ironically, those tend to be the most celebrated. So it's kind of weird how that works. Yeah.
Hmm. Hmm. And I think the world is craving that. I think that's what the world needs. I think we're all looking for connection, for seeing, you know, the side of ourselves that we might not be willing to share always. It gives permission. People don't need it, but we feel like we do, to kind of be messy, to let ourselves be seen as really who we are and what's really going on. And especially during this time, I mean, it's an intense time that kind of highlighted that for everybody, the importance of it. And I think it's, you share a very important point. First of all, that's scary. That's really scary to do, to put yourself out there like that.
Yeah.
And that if we're thinking about who we're writing for, like if we're going, who am I gonna, it's a whole different type of writing, right?
Mm.
It's and what I like to really push myself to do and to push my authors to do, right, is to do just right from the heart and not think about the end result of what it's going to be. Just like let it flow out, because that's so healing for us
Hmm.
people. Then the writing becomes not just, you know, the thing we're doing or the end result. It transforms us too, which is so neat. And the readers get that, they feel that on the other end.
Yeah, that's a good point you bring up. I think writing is probably the single most healing thing that one can do.
Mm.
And even if it's just for an audience of one, like even if it's just in a personal journal, which is most of my writing actually is in a personal journal.
Mm.
Um, I think it's so healing because I think like it's always like, I guess Tim Ferriss calls it like the monkey mind. So our minds are always going off, and I think the more we can write and process these emotions and these feelings, the more we're able to just like be with like the whatever it is, instead of it being like in our unconscious or subconscious.
Mhm.
So every day I actually write at least one page, like, and it doesn't even have to make sense. Like it could just literally be just like random thoughts.
Mhm.
For me, it's such a healing process. So yeah, I completely agree with you.
Mm. Yeah, I do that in the morning too. I do some writing every single morning, and it just becomes part of life. And if I don't have it, it feels like something's off. What happened? What happened? Oh, I didn't do my writing yet. So it's yeah, it feels very it's a different experience to have that as part of the day. So it's cool that you do that.
And I'm curious why you choose in the morning
Mm.
or compared to at night, because I tend to do it before I go to sleep. But I'm curious what your
Well, yeah. So what I've been doing is, what I do is I do like a clearing in the morning, because sometimes I would wake up and be like anxious for the day or things, you just wake up a certain way, and I wanted to start my day in a good way. So it's kind of like clearing of all the things that like I might be stressed out about, and then I do what I call greening, which I'm writing about things that are going right, that I feel good about. Like they might not be perfect, but they're like, hey, we're going in the right direction here, and it helps me reframe. What I have started doing is later in the day doing like a little, like a gratitude kind of writing a little bit about, okay, these are good things that happened, because I've noticed sometimes I start getting in a funk
hmm.
later in the day. I start getting like so that's been helping, but it's not a regular practice yet for me, and I want it to be. So that's cool. So you do it at night?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I think in the morning you're more creative in general because it's before you're like mentally exhausted. But
Mhm.
for me at night, it's like a clearing where it's like so I can sleep peacefully. Like let's say I'm like, oh, tomorrow I have to like, I should get back to Liz, or oh, I have, I'm speaking with Ryan. So it's like instead of me like, okay, what do I have to do tomorrow? I just write it out. So that helps me like sleep in peace. And then when I wake up, I'm like, oh, these are the 6 things I'm gonna do tomorrow. So it's just like for me, it helps me sleep. But I think your type of writing is more like creative and more, yeah, like the creation aspects of writing.
Well, I think this is neat because it shows that everybody's there's no right way to do it. Right, that for every person, it's you're going to find a thing that is going to fit really well into your day, and you can play with adding things on or changing it. It doesn't have to be set in stone forever. That there's different ways to like add these nice mindful writing practices into your day. That's really cool.
And you've seen so much type of writing, right? And this collaboration process, right? So, I mean, firsthand that there's no like right way to write, right? So.
Right, exactly. And yeah, the collaboration is, you said earlier that you're someone that wants to do something like by yourself a lot. And that's always been, I've been like, let me just, even though I've done a lot of collaborative work for nonprofits, that's a field I came from before. And I like organized different groups and programs and things. But I always liked doing all the work myself. And I would have trouble because I'd be like, no, I got it. I'm fine. I got it. Instead of like utilizing all the people involved. And what's been fun with this project, and this just came to be. I hadn't done a collaborative book project before, for me and for my business, and it just, I love this process. I didn't realize how fun it could be. It's been an absolute joy, and reading the chapters just fill my heart, because they
Mm,
are so different, and there's so many different experiences that people are going through, and
mm,
giving people a chance to share it with other people. And I know once people are getting to read these, like I've grown so much from reading them myself, and I can't wait to, like, have other people read them too. It's warm fuzzies, lots of warm fuzzies going on.
you're right, because I like when I was a teenager, and I remember reading Chicken Soup for the Soul, and it was so free. It was like magical, right? Like just escaping and just like sometimes you cry, you all these emotions that you feel. And like you said, like it's like the modern Chicken Soup for the Soul, and I feel like that's such a great analogy. And I think we do need we do need more stories like this, because when you turn on the news, like it's not it's not the same type of content that our book has, right? It's painted in a certain way to get people to from a place of fear and from a place of because ultimately that sells more. People are gonna. It's interesting because I think humans innately have like a fight or flight. Because we have thousands and thousands of years of conditioning. So
Yeah.
of course, like humans innately are going to come from that place. But if you read more books like the ones that are collaboration piece, you come from a place of like oneness and spirituality and connectedness instead of a difference and us versus them mentality. So I think they'll get a good sense. Everyone will get a good sense of like, oh, we're not so different after all. I mean, different but the same. It's interesting, right? Because it's like, but it's all relatable. That's the thing.
That's the thing. Yeah, that's what's so cool. The stories, people's experiences are different, but there's like overall themes. There's, who we are, how connected we all are, how everything that we do, we can relate to each other, and see things. I think um, it gives us a little snapshot into people's lives that are all relatable and understandable.
Mm.
And that's really a lovely thing, I think. So thank you so much. I could just keep talking to you literally all day, Davidson. Thank you so much for the generosity of your time. How do people get in touch with you? Can you share about your podcast and your website and all that?
Yeah, my name davidsonhang.com. I'll just write about like I guess I explain it like it's supposed to be like an online diary, like a journal where I just write about interesting stuff that's happening and just my thoughts on things. And then the Davidson Hang podcast, which we have a lot of our collaboration authors, and so that's been fun. And then I have a YouTube channel where I'll just uh, share or interview people, so I posted on that as well. And yeah, so if you just Google Davidson Hang, I'm on basically all the different platforms. So yeah, thanks for having me, Liz. I really appreciate you.
Thank you, Davidson.